We are live here in the OC Rock Radio studio, on OC Rock Radio, on the TuneIn app, and of course on Jared's Facebook Live. I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And we have a great show for you guys today. The NBA Draft Lottery happened yesterday, fortunately for us. Gave us extra content for today's show. And of course, the NBA playoffs are going on. We have a very interesting Do You Care segment where we're going to call out some people that had some trouble with the law this week or are potentially getting suspended, all this stuff. And then we'll jump in a little bit later and kind of do cover 5 like we usually do and cover our bases, no pun intended, on a lot of the other sports that are going on, obviously, because we have the Stanley Cup Playoffs still going on. We do have the MLB season, and I'm sure we can find some NFL news to talk about because we just found out some stuff just a couple minutes ago.
Literally breaking news. About
the New York Jets. So not a good week, or actually not a good 24 hours.
Yeah, if you're in New York.
For New York. Yes. But it's Cover 2 podcast. And we're going to start the podcast today, of course, talking about the NBA Draft Lottery because so much went on last night. The New Orleans Pelicans. Yes, you heard that right if you haven't heard it. The New Orleans Pelicans have gotten the number 1 pick via the lottery. The Memphis Grizzlies at number 2. And everybody's favorite New York Knicks at number 3. And somehow, the basketball gods rewarded the Los Angeles Lakers with the 4th pick. The Lakers jumping from the 9th pick to the 4th pick. And what could be called, you could call it collusion, you could call it whatever you want, but the Lakers, the Lakers get a pick that they should not be getting. And it's super exciting for all Lakers fans and the Lakers front office and players alike because they were supposed to get the 9th pick. The way this lottery actually ended up being was you expected it to be the Lakers almost to fall back in this draft. Instead, they jump up to number 4, which creates so many possibilities. Now, I just want to lay it out because I'm going to give you the floor in a second. I want to lay it out like this. The Lakers right now, after this draft lottery, have LeBron James. They still have their young core. They have the number 4 pick in the draft. And they have what I saw last night is $40 million in cap space, which means they have a max slot. Sounds pretty good to me, doesn't it? So, Jared, take the floor. Let's talk about the Lakers first, and then we'll jump into the rest, and we'll talk about Zion and the Pelicans and the Knicks and all that stuff. But I want to talk about the Lakers first. What does this mean for the Lakers? And what, in your opinion, should they do on draft day or before draft day?
There are endless possibilities right now
so
for
many
this Lakers team. And literally, as you were just talking right now, something came into my mind that just immediately made me sad.
Yeah.
And that was the fact that the Lakers, with all this now, the number 4 pick, right? They have LeBron James, obviously. You have your young core of players in Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Kyle Kuzma, who was at the draft lottery last night. And yet, the one thing that is stuck in the back of my mind is the fact that Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka are the 2 people running this team right now.
Oh, you had to call them out in the first minute?
And the fact that I have zero... Well, okay, I don't want to say about Jeannie Buss. I'm specifically talking about Rob Pelinka. I have
Dude, you can put blame on... I put blame on Jeannie Buss for 10 minutes on Monday.
Right.
Yeah.
But I have zero confidence in Rob Pelinka, who is not only right now the GM, but also like the acting president of basketball operations.
Yes.
I don't have confidence in him that he will be able to make the right decisions as far as scouting all of these athletes coming into the NBA, and whether it's a trade to get another superstar, whether it's just staying where you are at number 4 and drafting a player, even when it comes to the NBA free agency and trying to pick up another all-star a la Kyrie Irving or Klay Thompson or one of those guys. I'm just... As great as all of this is for the Lakers right now, and the fact that going into this lottery, I was expecting him to be maybe 10th or 11th or something like that, and the fact that they have number 4, that's fantastic. But it's now about what are they going to do with that, and with the way that Jeannie Buss and Rob Pelinka have ran this team in the last year or so, I don't have the confidence that they will make the right choices for the betterment of this team.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know why, I literally just got down on myself.
Wow, man.
I know, right? I was all excited.
I excited everybody about the pick.
I was ready to come on here and just say, oh, the Lakers are going to do this, and they have an opportunity to, potentially either get like R.J. Barrett or Darius Garland, the guard from Vanderbilt, a solid player, a guy that can create his own shot, and definitely, another shooting presence that the Lakers desperately need. And while that's still a legitimate possibility, at the end of the day, I'm sitting here and I'm saying Rob Pelinka is one of the main guys in this front office who makes decisions, and I don't trust that he will make the right decision.
But what would you do in this situation if you were GM? To be honest, I'd rather have you GM right now. If you were the GM and you have probably about 2 months until the draft at this point,
right?
No, about a month.
A little less.
About a month, yeah. So about a month until the draft. Do you immediately start talking to the Pelicans about possibly the number 1 pick? Do you talk with other teams about stars that you potentially could get? Or do you kind of just focus on looking and trying to get another player for the young core, a Darius Garland, like you mentioned, a Jarrett Culver, somebody like that? Because they have so many options here. You can move up in the draft. You could trade for a star. And you could also just make the pick. So what would you do out of those 3 options? What's the highest percentage move you would make? So
the number 1 thing I'm doing is I am trying to re-engage with the Pelicans about Anthony Davis and about the number 1 pick.
Because right? Magic's not here anymore.
Magic's not here anymore.
We already embarrassed Magic enough, so he's not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. If you're the Pelicans, whether you're talking about the number 1 pick, which is essentially Zion Williams, right? I don't think there's any speculation or any surprise there. Zion Williams is the number 1 pick. You might as well just start printing the jerseys right now for the Pelicans, because if the Pelicans stay put, that's who they're taking, right? So you have to think about it as this. If you're going up for the number 1 pick, it's for Zion Williams. That is obviously going to be a hefty price to pay, no matter what pick you are, to go up to get that number 1. If you're talking to the Pelicans about Anthony Davis, that's also a hefty price you're going to pay, because Anthony Davis is a box office superstar, and when he's engaged, when he's healthy, when he wants to play, he is arguably the best player in the NBA.
True.
Right? He did have some injuries last year, as well as he just wasn't fully engaged in this and with the Pelicans, and I don't think that's a surprise at all.
No.
Right? But when he is fully there and he's committed to his team, he's almost unstoppable. So if you're the Lakers, yes, I think you definitely engage with the Pelicans, because you have multiple offers or multiple things that you want from the Pelicans, whether it's the number 1 pick or it's Anthony Davis. Here's the problem. I don't think the Lakers have enough by themselves to create a trade scenario with the Pelicans.
Yeah.
Because for the Pelicans, listen, they've already stated back during the season when the Lakers tried to get Anthony Davis the first time that they wanted the moon and more, right? The Lakers right now, yes, they have cap space, they have money, they have LeBron James, but the Pelicans have already made it pretty clear that they aren't interested in what the Lakers want. Now, you're right, Magic Johnson isn't there, so maybe there's something about Magic Johnson that the people in the Pelicans front office didn't necessarily like, whether they didn't want to do negotiations with him specifically. Hopefully, that's the case, right? Unfortunately for Magic Johnson, but hopefully for the Lakers' sake, now that's the case, because now, with an unbiased mind, they can go into this potential negotiations and actually do business and stop putting all the personal stuff aside, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm the Lakers, that's the first thing I'm doing. I'm sending my scouts out, of course, to look at Darius Garland and R.J. Barrett and all the other guys, because you have to be prepared that at the end of the day, you're stuck at number 4 and you have to make a pick. But I would prefer to go with the proven Anthony Davis, or try to go out and get a Kyrie Irving or a Klay Thompson or one of those superstar free agents to pair with those guys. I'm 98% sure that Zion Williams is going to pan out in the NBA, but you never know, right? John Morant, he looks great, but you never know.
About any of these guys, you never really know.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I would take the proven guy that's already made it in the NBA over any of these draft picks. That would be my number one goal.
True.
Try to get the superstar that's already in the NBA, already proven themselves. If you can't, then you try to, potentially trade for the number 1 pick in Zion Williams. If you can't do that, then you stay put at number 4. Worst case, the Lakers have the number 4 pick and more than likely Darius Garland.
Yeah, what I think here is again, the Lakers got lucky they're even in this situation, but I am actually going to go down the road and say this. The worst possible team that could have got the number 1 pick in the Lakers case was the Pelicans.
Right.
Because now you can't even trade up for the number 1 pick to trade Zion Williamson, technically, for Anthony Davis. Right? Oh, no, they already are going to get Zion Williamson. So the Pelicans have all of the leverage. They even have more leverage than they did mid-season when the Lakers were trying to trade their whole team and the city of Los Angeles to New Orleans. Okay? So I think for the Lakers, Anthony Davis isn't happening. I don't think that's a realistic thing unless they were just messing with Magic, which would be a really weird thing for a team to do. So I'm going to go with I'm going to as a Laker fan, I'm going to forget about Anthony Davis. He's not coming to our team. Whatever.
Not this year.
No. Well, yeah, that's true.
Let's all remember that Anthony Davis going into this year is in the last year of his contract. Yeah. So in reality, next offseason he could be a free agent. They can go wherever he wants.
True.
So if you're the Lakers and you're kind of thinking about that way, maybe you say, you know what? If the price is too steep, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
If the price is too steep, then maybe we try to go out to the number 1 pick, or we just stay where we are at number 4 and try to add another superstar.
Yeah.
And then next offseason, when Anthony Davis is free from the Pelicans, then we court him and we try to get him and pair LeBron James with whatever other superstar we get this year, and that's our new big 3. So, if you're the Lakers, I think that has to be in the back of their mindset as well, as we can't just give up the farm for Anthony Davis knowing that he will be a free he'll be a free agent
That's a very good
next
point.
year.
So there is some leverage. I'm glad you said that, because there is some leverage that the Lakers now have and go, okay, well, you have to trade this dude.
Right.
It was like
you ain't giving him up for nothing.
If you look at it, I'm going to compare 2 LA teams and stuff like that. When the Dodgers went out and got Manny Machado last season, they gave up way less than, let's say, if they would have got Machado 2 years prior or the year prior, because he was in his walk season and Baltimore was such a bad team. Baltimore had no leverage, and at the trade deadline, they're like, okay, well, you need to give us somebody, but you probably aren't going to get as much as you could have, right? So the Lakers, maybe if Anthony Davis somehow is still on this Pelicans team and it's not working out again for the Pelicans, maybe you go out at the trade deadline and go, hey, you know what? We are, we're in playoff contention, and I'm throwing us way into February of next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, we're jumping ahead.
We are jumping ahead, but there
months.
is some leverage the Lakers have. But I just think that with the Pelicans having the number 1 pick, because that was the biggest asset in this whole draft, you now take that off the table, because the 4th pick is great, but nobody is Zion Williamson in this draft. You can say John Morant, you can say R.J. Barrett, but Zion Williamson is the star everyone knows. He might not actually end up being the best player from this draft, because you've looked at other drafts. Steph Curry was 7th pick. Many other guys have dropped to the mid-rounds and stuff like that. Zion is the guy. And the fact that you can't even trade up to get the Zion pick, or then you really have no leverage. So I think if you're Lakers, you forget about Anthony Davis, and you just try to sign free agents. And if not, I honestly think that they should just probably draft a guy in this position, look more to draft an older, more experienced player that can play, that I think is more ready for the NBA right now. So maybe even trade back another pick, something like that. With this, I'm just throwing it out there. I think the Lakers need just more assets to fill out their team. Because I know they got, they were in the 9th pick position, but they were pretty close to making the playoffs this year. They weren't way off like the Phoenix Suns or the New York Knicks, right? They just, once they got out of playoff contention, they kind of gave up. And that's why their draft stock went way down and stuff like that. So the Lakers were, and they still have LeBron James. So I do think that they're only a couple pieces away from making the playoffs. And then if you can go out and grab a star, Then you elevate to that potential contendership if the Warriors get broken up, stuff like that. Because I do think the NBA is starting to get a little more, what's the
level.
a little more level. You see the Warriors, they're great, but you expect one of those guys to leave. You never know. If they don't, then we're in the same discussion, and nobody really is at an advantage at that point. But I do think the Lakers should just focus on actually drafting someone in that fourth spot, or maybe trading back, getting 2 picks, maybe trading back with Atlanta, get 8th and 10th picks, right? Give Atlanta the 4th pick. So I'm just saying, I'm throwing out all these scenarios. I think they should focus more on the draft with this pick instead of going out and trying to trade for Anthony Davis or trade for another established star that probably won't want to play for the team. So I say you go with this. You got the 4th pick, so you drafted 4, or you do it like you were intending on drafting the entire time. You got lucky with this, so don't screw it up and give up this pick for nothing, right? Or give up this pick and 6 other guys. Remember, I still attest, although I don't like the Lakers core as much anymore, and after this non-playoff year last year, I really am down on them. You still don't want to give up everybody.
No, of
right?
course not.
Yeah, so and that's what they were talking about with the Pelicans earlier this year. So now you're going to give up everybody and the 4th pick. I'm not down for that. So I do think for the Lakers, because we do need to wrap it up and talk about the rest of this draft lottery, I think they should focus on the draft more than trading for a star. I think you go and try to sign a guy and stuff like that.
You're right. I agree with that, and I think because things are now looking up for the Lakers as far as they're in a better draft position and they have a better opportunity to make their roster better in a shorter period of time, yes, I think now you keep more of your star players. If this were spread out in like a 3-year window, then I think there's more room for you to trade your young guys because there's just more of an opportunity for you to then bring on other players. But if you're trying to win this year or if you're trying to win next year, you need to keep most of those core together, right? Because LeBron James, I think he's proven now with his age, the fact that he was injured last year, he needs help. And you're going up to in the Western Conference where we saw this year, the West is only getting better. Yeah. We know about the Warriors, the Blazers, the Denver Nuggets came out of nowhere. The Spurs are still legitimate, right? The Houston Rockets. I mean, I can go. There's a plethora. Dude, of
even
teams
even go to the 8th pick, and the Warriors are saying they're going to be us in a couple of years. It's literally the 8 teams in the West and the Sacramento Kings are all moving up slowly, and so you have 9 legitimate teams in the West that are a threat to make the playoffs, and Lakers aren't one of them. So you need to get at least compete with the Kings, right? The Kings had a better record than them last year, so you have to put the Kings in that thing. The Clippers had a better record than them. You, of course, have to put them in the thing. And the Spurs are going to sign Greg Popovich to an extension soon, or maybe they already did.
He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, so that, as long as Greg Popovich is there, they are going to be a competitive team that can steal wins from anybody on any given night. So you're right about that. And so the Lakers do need to win right now, but you also don't want to just ruin your team for the future and end up like the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Miami Heat or the Cleveland Cavaliers the time before. LeBron James is an asset, but he will leave. And we've seen this in the past, and he will not be with the Lakers for the next 10 years. He'll be with the Lakers for 3, maybe even 2, and then he'll move on probably to something else again. So I think, you got to win now. But that doesn't mean you give up assets that you have. You add to it, and you go out and try to sign a free agent. And if you have to trade and someone's willing to trade, then you do it. But I think that, like I've said a bunch, Lakers got to get out of this mentality that they have any leverage in anything. Because I think now people see them in a lower light than a higher light as far as their franchise and the way they're run. So you don't have that, with the Lakers we have the 6 championships. You mentioned this on Monday on Alex Lustig's show. That it doesn't matter. Those championships were won in the mid-2000s. The NBA is different now, and you have to build for this NBA. You can't build like Shaq still exists, and centers dominate the league. So, we need to move on from the Lakers, but I do think that they have an asset here that they shouldn't have had, and you have to take advantage of that. And you have to be, in some ways, conservative if you have to with this pick, because you've screwed up so much in the past, really for 5 or 6 years. So we'll move on, though, because the Pelicans have number 1 pick. So what do the Pelicans do? Because Anthony Davis, we've heard, everything about the Pelicans in the last 24 hours, but we've heard that Anthony Davis still wants to leave that organization. Alvin Gentry, their head coach, said that Anthony Davis will be fine. We heard rumors that Zion Williamson might not be super happy with the fact that New Orleans is picking number 1. So, Jared, what do the Pelicans do in this situation? What is the smartest move for them, considering that they don't have the best look on their franchise either right now?
Right. This is an interesting, and like you mentioned, from the Lakers' perspective, this was the worst thing that could have happened with the Pelicans then getting the 1 overall pick. If you're the Pelicans, you got to be ecstatic.
This is the best thing that could happen.
Did you see their entire marketing and ticket team?
Yep.
Yesterday they were in a room together and they were jumping up and down like they all just won $1 million. I mean, literally, they were psyched because they're all just like, oh my gosh, we just got Zion Williams. Our ticket sales are about to skyrocket and we're about to make a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing. They still have Anthony Davis on their roster. They have Drew Holiday. They have Julius Randle, Darius Miller. That's a solid core of players. Obviously, Anthony Davis is a superstar of that team. You take Anthony Davis away from this team, and they're mediocre at best.
Oh, they're horrible.
Right?
They're probably they're along with the Knicks and Cavs as far as roster. Yeah.
The fact that this team, and I'm not saying that they have to come out and just say, well, we're not going to try to keep Anthony Davis. We know he doesn't want to be here. We're just going to trade him. I'm not saying they do that. But it seems like they're being a little naive, and especially head coach Alvin Gentry, who just yesterday, immediately after they found out they got the number 1 overall pick, Adam Gentry, responding to a question about Anthony Davis, said, Anthony Davis will be fine. Well, Alvin Gentry, no, he's actually not going to be fine because all the reports are still indicating that Anthony Davis does not want to be there, even though the Pelicans now have the number 1 overall pick. He still wants to leave. So whether you trade him this upcoming season or he leaves on his own next offseason, he's more than likely going to be gone, right? So for the Pelicans to sit here and continue to just be tunnel vision and not understand that they need to get something for Anthony Davis, right? And the fact that, if I'm Zion Williams, I'm sitting here right now saying this is a franchise that is not all on the same page, right? They're in flux. Why does Anthony Davis really want to leave? Is it for basketball reasons, or is it because he doesn't like the way that his organization operates?
It's a very good point. That's why I mentioned in the beginning where their franchise is not in the highlight because they're asking for the moon with the Lakers. Anthony Davis doesn't want to play for them. They have not done a good job in drafting and building around Anthony Davis. It was a complete failure. Having drafted Anthony Davis number 1 a number of years ago, they have made the playoffs once and then didn't win a playoff game, right? Because I think they got swept by the Warriors the year they made it. So, complete failure, in my opinion. It's a lot like what the Angels have done with Mike Trout, where they haven't really built around one of the best players in the game. So, you're right. There's something wrong with this team. It's just pinpointing what it is. Maybe it's Anthony Davis, but I'm not going to go with that because I think that the NBA, there's a lot of examples of this where front offices just don't get it. And we've seen that the stars, when they decide they want to leave, they leave, and a lot of them have been very successful. Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving for at least 1 year, just to name a few. And then, of course, you have all the guys that join the Heat and all that stuff. So I'm not going to put the blame on the player for wanting to leave because he sees LeBron, Durant. Oh, I want to do that too. I don't want to be in this city where where people care about football a lot more, and our team hasn't been good, and we have a boring name and boring colors and all this stuff. It's so I can understand why he'd want to leave, considering that they gave him so many years and they have not competed. But you're right. But if he wants to stay, you have to really start building around this guy. And obviously, you get lucky with Zion Williamson to start. Good start, but again, you don't want to do it. Here's a question real quick. So a lot of people have been talking about oh, they're going to trade Zion Williams, or excuse me, they're going to trade Anthony Davis for the 3rd pick to the Knicks. Is there a chance that you could actually trade a guy like Drew Holiday instead for a draft pick in this draft and try to keep Anthony Davis and do something like that, or maybe Julius Randle? Because I just feel like none of these teams that are in the top 5, besides the Phoenix Suns, have enough to even trade for Anthony Davis. So I don't see that being a realistic thing either. A lot like Anthony Davis going to the Lakers. I don't really see him going to any of these teams, even in like the top 10. I see him going to a contender because there's just not enough. You want to get as much value back as possible. So, what are the teams that you could see him getting traded to? And what could they get in this draft if they want to go and try to get an RJ Barrett or a Cam Reddish and team up Zion with one of his teammates to start this rebuild quicker?
So you're right. That
a lot of questions there. Sorry.
The top 5 teams, and we only have a couple minutes. We're going to actually bleed this into the second segment.
100%,
so
yeah.
Stay with
Absolutely.
us. But you're right. The top 5 teams, other than the Phoenix Suns, the Lakers, the Knicks, really don't have all of the assets in place that the Pelicans would want in return for Anthony Davis.
Because the Lakers have the most, and they're not.
And that didn't work the first time.
So the Knicks, who's their best player? I really don't know. I made a joke last night. Alonzo Trier, right?
I mean, I wouldn't. They don't have a superstar that's nearly equal to Anthony Davis. Nor do I think, even if they were to package like 3 of their best players plus next year's first round draft pick, I don't even know if that would be sufficient enough for the Pelicans to even want to like accept or counter that offer.
Exactly. And the big thing here is with this 3rd pick, this is what people are calling a 3-player draft. You have Williamson, Morant, and RJ Barrett, who all have very high value. I think anybody would want to draft them, right? But, so they do have that asset, which is different from the 4th pick with the Lakers, that you are giving them RJ Barrett or potentially John Morant, depending on what the Memphis Grizzlies do with their pick. So they do have that value. The problem is, Dennis Smith Jr., that's not going to happen. DeAndre Jordan is not as good anymore.
Yeah, not at all.
You're not, like I said, Alonzo Trier, I can't even come up with a single player on the Knicks that would be of the value of anybody on the Lakers or Colin Sexton of the Cleveland Cavaliers or a Mike Conley, right? Or Jaren Jackson, someone like that for Memphis, or anybody on the Suns. A lot of these young players. So, I see, unless the Pelicans just give away Anthony Davis, which I think would be wrong for the NBA to allow to happen. I don't see the Knicks having any chance at getting Anthony Davis this year. I think maybe next year, like we're saying, he could sign with a team, open season, free agency, all that stuff. But yeah, I don't really know what the Pelicans are going to do if they want another draft pick in this draft. I don't know what they would really have to suffer the consequences of trying to do that.
They would have to lower their expectations tremendously.
Yeah.
And understanding what they're going to get back in return.
No, 100%. So I think we're about at we're at 9:30. So we'll go to break right now, and we'll bleed this into the next segment. We're going to be talking about what the Memphis Grizzlies should do, and look at kind of what's in store for some of the teams that dropped pretty far. The Suns, the Bulls, the Cavs. What are they supposed to do in this draft? Considering they thought they might have a chance at Zion, RJ Barrett, or John Morant, they're not going to get any of those guys. So what do they do? And then we'll talk about the NBA playoffs and predict the series and talk about Game 1. So this is Cover 2 Podcast on OC Rock Radio, the TuneIn app, and Jared's Facebook Live.
The 4th pick in the 2019 NBA Draft goes to the Los Angeles Lakers. The 3rd pick goes to the New York Knicks. The 2nd pick will be made by the Memphis Grizzlies, and that means that the number 1 pick in the 2019 NBA Draft goes to the New Orleans Pelicans.
Gotta love when Twitter malfunctions on you.
What happened?
It's just like I went to go copy and paste something and it closed out Safari.
Houston had some success, trapping Steph and really getting out on him. Is this sustainable for you guys to keep dropping the big so far?
Did they? I can't remember. When he had 33 in the second half, were they trapping then?
Yes.
They were, and he scored 33 in the second half.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we'll look at that.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger?
We're back here on the Cover 2 podcast. Thank you for joining us once again. We're going to continue our NBA draft lottery talk. In the first segment, we kind of talked about the Lakers, and now that they have moved up to the number 4 spot, the potential scenarios that they will have and all the different options that they now have, whether they want to keep that number 4 pick, whether they want to trade it away. There is a lot for the Lakers to decide on,
Yes.
a lot more than they had before this draft lottery. We also got into the Pelicans a little bit, and obviously it's more than likely that they will take Zion Williams number 1 if they keep that pick, or do they want to trade and also get maybe the second or the third pick and pair Zion Williams with another one of these top picks? They also have Anthony Davis. What are they going to do there? There's so much going on with those Pelicans. And before we move on to some of the other teams, like the Memphis Grizzlies, who are sitting in the number 2 spot, I did have a question and a statement more for the Pelicans, and this is it. So if you're Zion Williams, right, the consensus number 1 overall pick, right, I wouldn't be necessarily thrilled knowing that I'm more than likely going to New Orleans, and here's why. If the Knicks have the number 1 overall pick, if the Lakers have the number 1 overall pick, even if the Phoenix Suns have the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, seriously.
I would be a little more ecstatic for this specific reason. Those teams that I just mentioned right now, if they have more of an attractive team plus an attractive city
True.
for potential free agents to want to come play there. Not many potential free agents like Kyrie Irving and Klay Thompson and some of these other big name guys are necessarily looking at going to New Orleans to play basketball, right? No. It's not LA, it's not New York, it's not even like Florida where it's sunshine and most of the year round.
It's not even a basketball town.
Right.
It's a football town.
So, if you're Zion Williams and you're saying, okay, I'm more than likely going to be the number 1 overall pick, and let's say Anthony Davis leaves, it's now the Zion Williams show. The Pelicans haven't been able to win with Anthony Davis, who's a proven box office superstar.
Yep.
I get that Zion Williams is like a freak, and he's the closest thing to LeBron James that we've seen coming out of college or even high school. But who's to say that Zion Williams is going to be a carry a team in his rookie year and lead them to the playoffs in a tough Western Conference?
Yeah, no, that team.
So if you're Zion, you got to start scouting right now, right? And saying, hey, man, I'm going to need some more help because I'm probably going to be with this team for at least 3 to 4 years on my rookie contract. And the majority of those years, probably not going to have Anthony Davis.
True.
And it's going to be very tough for him to court other superstars who want to come play with him. So from that standpoint, I think, of course he's going to be happy to get the number 1 pick. But I think he's probably preferring that it would have been the Knicks or the Lakers or a better destination where it's easier to attract other stars to come play with him.
No, I completely agree. And like I mentioned before, they have organizationally screwed up what was one of the best players in the NBA, Anthony Davis. They screwed up their team with him. So why do we think that they might do anything different? Well, they do have a David Griffin now in a high role, and I believe David Griffin was the Cavaliers GM, correct? Is that where he's coming from? I
believe so.
That's where I thought that name came from. But so they do have somewhat new management there with this team. So hopefully David Griffin can turn it around. He knows what it's like to lose a star and also gain a star. So, that's a good guy to have in there. But you're right. Until we see it happen, I really have no faith in the New Orleans Pelicans. I do feel bad for Zion Williamson because he made college basketball watchable last year. Like, you tuned in to watch those North Carolina Duke games. I tuned in to watch Duke play NC State just because I want to see Zion Williamson.
I want to see him throw down a dunk.
Exactly. Not a lot of people can do that. R.J. Barrett couldn't have done that, who was going to be the third pick. John Morant. Okay, so in some ways, John Morant could have made me go watch. But the name is not, it wasn't there, right? We were watching Zion Williamson in high school do dunks. Drake wore his high school jersey before he even got to Duke. So this guy was a generational player, a lot like LeBron James, a lot like the Kobe Bryants, right? A guy that people knew about coming out and was going to be a superstar. So, and he's going to New Orleans Pelicans. That's not what you want, to be honest. And even Kobe didn't want it. He wasn't even going to play for the Hornets, right? Or that franchise.
He ended up getting traded.
True.
It's a little different.
A little bit different. But still could get traded. Zion still could get traded.
Right.
But
so I just wanted to throw that out
absolutely.
there.
I know, because one of the first things you texted me after this lottery was announced was that there's nothing even. What is it? This doesn't even matter.
Listen, it's New Orleans, it's the Pelicans. It's just not. It's not exciting.
No,
it's
they have a boring.
Showtime.
Yeah, they have a boring team with a bad logo and name of their team. Okay, nobody's scared of Pelicans. I'm just saying, aren't teams? I mean, nobody's scared of a bunch of lakes either. In the Lakers' case, or a ship like the Clippers. But you get the point. They went from a name that had been synonymous with their franchise for a while, the Hornets, and changed it to the Pelicans. A bird that you see on a railing at a dock. Okay? I'm just saying, guys. Pelicans aren't impressive in any way, so why would anybody want to go to that franchise, right? Like, where this team's name sucks, their arena's boring, their city doesn't care about basketball, and they haven't been good, and they already screwed up with the number one pick. Everything is against them in this case. So, you're right. Zion, when you saw his face, that's the same face I would have said. I probably would have been like, I didn't want to play for the Pelicans if I was in the NBA. But that's why I'm not in the NBA, because I say stuff like that. And I didn't play basketball, too. So that doesn't help either. We could stick on the Pelicans. We could crap on the city of New Orleans all day. We could crap on the Lakers management all day. But we do need to move on, and we need to talk about the Memphis Grizzlies because they have the number 2 pick. Talk about boring organizations. Memphis has a chance to get John Morant or R.J. Barrett. Jarrett, really quickly, who should they pick out of those two? And just because they have Mike Conley, does that mean they can't draft John Morant?
No, of course you do, because just because Mike Conley is on your team and he's one of the highest paid players in the NBA does not mean that you can't necessarily move or trade him and then easily slide John Morant in. Now, I'm not saying that these two are comparable. Yes, they're both guards and they both like to, have the ball in their hands and basically facilitate the offense. So, can one of them play off the ball? Yeah, they can if they work at it. It's not an ideal situation, but it can happen. If the Memphis Grizzlies want to keep Mike Conley, then I think the better fit for them would be R.J. Barrett. Because even though R.J. Barrett does play with the ball in his hands, he can play off the ball. And I think his skill set would pair a little better with Mike Conley. If the Grizzlies are thinking about trading Mike Conley, depending on what they can get for him, then I think it's a no-brainer. And I think you go with John Morant. Yeah. Because I think he can come in and not necessarily replace Mike Conley in his first year from an experience standpoint, but from a talent standpoint, I think he's right there, right? As far as facilitating, having the ball in his hands, he's a great shooter, just as good of a shooter as Mike Conley, in my opinion. And I think really that's the only question on this team as far as where they go with the number 2 overall pick. I don't think they trade. I think they stay with this pick and make a selection. It just depends on, do you want Mike Conley or do you not? Because if you do, you're probably taking R.J. Barrett, and then Mike Conley goes number 3 then Ja Morant goes number 3 to the Knicks.
Yeah.
If you don't want Mike Conley, then Ja Morant is probably going number 2. And I think it's as simple as that. I don't really think there's much more to talk about because the rest of this team, you've got Avery Bradley, Kyle Anderson, Jaren Jackson, and Jonas Valanciunas, right? That's not necessarily...
That's a starting lineup, yeah.
It's a starting lineup, but it's not necessarily household names, that like I said, another destination where free agents aren't necessarily looking to go to Memphis, right?
No, but they've had a lot, a better... I know the team isn't together anymore. You don't have the Gasols, the Randolphs,
right.
the guys. But this organization looks a lot better than New Orleans.
No, they are.
Does.
They're well-rounded, right? They kind of hang their hat on defense. So Memphis has never led the league or never been in the top 5 in scoring. They're always about playing hard defense and having a lower scoring game, like more in the low to mid 90s, right? That's kind of their game plan. That's
Grindhouse.
what they do.
Yep.
And in today's NBA, it doesn't necessarily work, but they've been able to be somewhat successful and sustainable with that. Now, I think eventually they're going to have to find scorers and shooters, and I think that's where John Morant comes in. I feel like if you're going to get an RJ Barrett, he fits more of what Memphis wants to do right now.
Yeah.
To whereas John Morant can come in and be that kind of new age basketball player that can bring the 3-point shooting and bring the guy that can kind of create his own shot. So, like I said, I think this is more of an easy decision depending on if you want to keep Mike Conley or if you don't. What are your thoughts?
I think it actually doesn't matter if they want to keep Mike Conley or not, because I think what Mike Conley is, that contract's huge. Okay? So trading that contract, there's only a couple teams that realistically can even take on a player like that. They also have a bad contract in Chandler Parsons on this team as well. So, I'm looking at their young core, and you have Jaren Jackson Jr., who I think is going to be a very solid player. You have Jonas Valanciunas, who has been proven to be a very solid player. You also have Dylan Brooks. And you also have Kyle Anderson, who I think is a very solid player. That's kind of your building block. You can keep Mike Conley or not, but eventually that man is probably not going to be with this franchise unless he just wants to stick it out like a Damien Lillard does. Okay? But so those are your 4 that you're kind of building around. So I think they can draft anybody here because you only realistically have one young forward in Jaren Jackson. You only realistically have one young guard in Dylan Brooks and Kyle Anderson, who are not better than John Morant. And I think even with Mike Conley, if you can put a lineup of Mike Conley, John Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr., a combination of Avery Bradley, Kyle Anderson, whatever, and then Jonas Valanciunas, you're fine. That's a solid starting lineup, even for next year's team. So yes, they do need to round out the roster with better players. Joakim Noah is not much value to him. And a lot of the other guys in this team have been on 5 different teams last 8 years. So it's not the best roster, but I think they are built a lot better than New Orleans. They're built better than the Cavs. So I think you can draft anybody, RJ Barrett, John Morant, this year, and then you figure it out later what you want to do with Mike Conley, Chandler Parsons, Jonas Valanciunas. But for this next year, I think you can draft anybody because of the lowness of the salary for a rookie contract, and then you just figure it out later.
So in that case, you just go best player
player possible,
which would be John Morant.
Here's the thing, because the comparison you made was if they want Mike Conley or not. Well, okay, I'm going to give a great example. The Cardinals already had a quarterback, and they drafted Kyler Murray. So why can't the Memphis Grizzlies draft a point guard?
No, I'm not saying they can't do that.
No, yeah.
I'm just saying John Morant and Mike Conley are more 2 of the similar type players, right?
True. Yeah.
And it would be a little bit tougher for them to both play on the
But
court at the same time.
aren't also, in some ways, Chris Paul and James Harden very similar now in the way they play? They both facilitate the ball. They're both kind of play point guard. I think the NBA nowadays, you can deal with 2 dominant guards. I think the league is a little different as far as the two dominant bigs. We saw it didn't really work out with DeMarcus Cousins and Anthony Davis, although DeMarcus Cousins did get hurt. But even while he was there, it didn't translate into a win every night. And even Zion Williamson and Anthony Davis joining together, I don't think that's they're in the playoffs next year. No, you have to build shooting and guards. And look at the Lakers, right? The Lakers had no shooting. They didn't make the playoffs. So I think with this, adding 2 guards is fine, but you already have one of the best point guards in the game. So if you want to keep him and you want to draft RJ Barrett, he has a spot in this roster too, and he has a spot to build without having to beat out anybody. Jaren Jackson Jr. and him can play in the same lineup. He can play in the same lineup as Jonas Valanciunas. And I think John Morant can fit in and play with Mike Conley, considering that Mike Conley probably won't be with the Grizzlies for the rest of his career, unless he wants to and take a pay cut. But so I think the Grizzlies can essentially do whatever they want, and it's going to be a success. So if you're a Grizzlies fan, I'd be happy because, again, they weren't supposed to have this pick either. I think they were supposed to have – what did I write down here? They were supposed to have the 8th pick.
Wow.
And they got number 2. So it's even better than the Lakers. Okay.
A lot of options.
Yeah.
A lot of options.
Yeah. If you're the Grizzlies, in my opinion, draft whoever you want, and you'll be fine. At least between R.J. Barrett and John Morant, or if somehow Zion Williamson drops or something like that, you draft him, obviously, too. So let's talk about these teams that dropped and jumped really quickly. Who do you actually think got the worst deal in this whole thing? Because no team dropped more than 3 spots. But in your opinion, who got the worst? Who's now in the worst position now that they lost out on a top 5 or top 3 draft pick?
I think it's the Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks. And for this reason, because I've been kind of watching some of the mocks.
They dropped from 5 to 8.
They did.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. The 5th overall pick is probably going to be DeAndre Hunter out of Virginia, who had a very, very solid postseason, right, with Virginia. Number 6 right now is Jarrett Culver. I think DeAndre Hunter's a little better, but Jarrett Culver, they're two of the
Very
similar players.
I would say they're similar.
And Jarrett Culver for Texas Tech he had a little bit less of a better time in the tournament than Hunter did for Virginia. But I think both of their games easily translate to the NBA. And I think offensively they'll both be able to be successful.
They're both veterans,
right?
Well, they're not veterans, but they're not the usual freshman,
right?
Skinny guy coming
out.
The
next best forward, in my opinion, is Cam Reddish. But here's the problem: I have been basically saying that Cam Reddish has been he didn't live up to the hype at all with Duke. Now you can say that he was easily overshadowed by Zion Williams and R.J. Barrett. Those are both true statements. Guess what? Duke didn't win the national championship, which means that they needed more help. They needed Cam Reddish to step up and play. There was one point in time where Cam Reddish was benched for one of the tournament games, and they could say that it was because of an injury or whatever. I'm pretty sure Coach K was just fed up with Cam Reddish because Cam Reddish, towards the end of the season, he came in as a 3-point shooter. He was shooting less than 20% from the 3. And all he would do offensively was draw offensive fouls when he was trying to drive to the basket. He wasn't able to create his own shot. And now whether that's a lack of confidence, whether his name just wasn't being called for plays, I'm not so sure. He's obviously a young kid, and maybe mentally it just got to him. But from what we saw in his one and only collegiate year at Duke, I don't think that translates him being a top 10 pick. But because of his upside, because of his length, he's 6'9", 205. He has a long wingspan. And from a defensive standpoint, he could be a huge asset to a team. I think he's going to go top 10.
Yeah.
But if I'm the Atlanta Hawks and he's the next best forward and Atlanta has a need there, it's almost kind of like, do we take him because of the potential? Or do we look at his game tape from last year and say, that's just not good enough, and then we have to go and we have to look at a Jackson Hayes or a Brandon Clark.
Yeah,
and not to say that those guys aren't good, but it's just the drop-off from, obviously Zion Williams and John Morant and R.J. Barrett, from those 3 to everyone else is pretty significant. So going from, potentially number 3 or 4 or 5 to number 8, that's huge.
Yeah.
And that's a huge loss for them. So I think Atlanta is the team that suffered the most.
I'm going to go with the Cleveland Cavaliers on this one because they had the best odds with the Knicks and Suns to get the number 1 pick, and the best odds to get the 2nd and 3rd pick, and now they end up with the 5th pick, and they miss out on John Morant and R.J. Barrett. And the only reason I'm not saying the Suns is because the Cavs couldn't control losing your best player. LeBron James leaves, your team is going to not be good anymore. We've seen this in the past, and they didn't trade LeBron James. He left. The Suns, they're just in rebuilding mode and haven't been able to...
the number 1 overall pick for the
last 5
years.
So I could care less. It sucks for them too, But I think the Cavs got the Ross deal because they're not the Knicks who stayed in the top 3 and will get one of these guys. And they're not the Suns who have had so many chances to get these guys. This was their year after Colin Sexton to get this pick. So I just think that, they got a raw deal here. And they get the 5th pick. And yes, they'll get maybe one of those forwards you mentioned, a DeAndre Hunter, a Jarrett Culver, or a Darius Garland if he drops. But that is not, that's not good enough to where what you were supposed to get. And I know the lotteries, all that stuff. But if you're looking at them, they were the second worst team in the NBA, I believe, record-wise. Not that translated anything in the lottery. They still had the same odds as the Knicks and Suns for the top 4 picks. But then you dropped to 5th. So you had the best odds for the 4, and you dropped to 5th. That really sucks for them because they didn't really do it to themselves. They, you had the homecoming of your favorite son come back a couple of years ago. He brings you a championship. You're unable to beat the Warriors, and then the next year, you're awful. So, I feel bad for the Cavs in some ways I don't, but they're definitely, I thought they got the Ross deal in this, and I think number 2 behind them would be Chicago. Because Chicago also, I think, had a chance to jump into the top 3, and then they go to 7, which is brutal. So, yeah, I think they got the Ross deal, and I think best deal. I think you could probably we don't have to go into that too much. Lakers, Grizzlies, Pelicans, obviously moving up 6-5 spots up to their picks. I think they got the best deal. All right, so we got 10 minutes plus to talk about the NBA playoffs here. Let's go over. What I want to do is I want to go over Bucks and Raptors really quick. Because, again, we did talk about this on Alex Lustig's show. So if you didn't see it, unfortunately you'll miss it. But we'll go and just talk about this series real quickly so we can end this segment talking about the Game 1 and predicting the Portland Golden State series. But what do you think is going to happen in this series? What do both teams have to do to win and get to the NBA Finals?
I think both of these teams are very evenly matched, first of all, right? They not only rely on their superstars. Obviously, the Bucks have Giannis, and the Raptors have Kawhi Leonard, right? Both of these teams are evenly matched because I think they play as a team. And what I mean by that is they don't just rely on their superstars to win them games, right?
Yes.
You have, for the Bucks, you have Chris Middleton, who's one of the best three-point shooters in the league. He was shooting around 40%. You've got Lopez, who is a three-point shooter, so he can bring out the center and the defender, and he can also go down in the low post. I think they're just a well-rounded team to where Giannis also doesn't look to score 30 or 40 every night. He looks to get his teammates involved, and because he does that, everyone has to be on their toes. It's not like, oh, let's just pass the ball to Giannis, and then we're going to stay in here in the corner and kind of like goof off for 20 seconds. Everyone has to be prepared and ready, knowing that Giannis is a willing passer. So because of that, I think that keeps the entire team involved, and I think that's why they've been so successful as an entire unit. The same thing can basically be said about the Raptors. Kawhi Leonard, even though he can go out and get 30 and 40 a night, and in Game 7 of the last series against the Sixers, he put up 39 shots and obviously had that crazy game winner. But that's not really the Kawhi Leonard that we know. He's the guy that likes to play great defense, facilitate the ball, give it to Kyle Lowry and the rest of that team, and I think they play as a unit as well. So both of these teams, I think, are evenly matched from that perspective. The fact that the Bucks have home court, I think that gives them a slight edge. There's an interesting discussion that I was listening to this morning on one of the sports talk radio shows, and I wanted to ask you this. Who has to win this Game 1 tonight, right? Like, who has more pressure to win? Many people are saying the Raptors just because they're on the road, but in my opinion, I think it's the Bucks. Because here's the thing.
Yeah.
The Bucks, if they lose one of these two games, the Raptors are really, really tough at home. I think the Raptors are a better home team than the Bucks are a better home team, if that makes sense. So for the Bucks, I think they need to win these first two games. That way, when they go to Toronto, even if they don't steal a game, the series is tied at 2-2, and it's back to just an even match. Then you get two more games at home.
Yeah.
If the Bucks lose one of these first two games at home, Game 1 or Game 2, you're already putting yourself in the negative because I think it's just going to be that much tougher to win on the road.
Yeah.
To whereas the Raptors, I think, Milwaukee, it's just not that much of a home court advantage, right? For the players it is, but from the fan standpoint, from the noise level standpoint, all of that coming into consideration, I just don't think that is as much of a home court advantage as Toronto has. So for those reasons, I'm saying that the Bucks need to win games 1 and 2 more than the Raptors.
I agree with you. They obviously need to, going up 2-0 is obviously very, very good when you have 2 games in a row against the team at their home court. As far as game 1 goes, I agree with you. I think the Bucks do need to win this game because they've had so much time off, and I feel like the Raptors really scratched and clawed to win that game 7 and literally needed a couple extra bounces to even win that game the way they won it. So they kind of, what it seems like is the Raptors burned themselves out in that series. You cannot let them take game 1 in your home when you've had a week to prepare, a week to get all your injuries kind of settled, and a week to game plan for one of the best players in the NBA in Kawhi Leonard, who will more than likely be tired somewhat for this game after what he did. 40 shots, 39 points, the game winner. He's cooler than the other side of the pillow, as Stuart Scott would say. But still, we saw what happened with the Trailblazers last night, which we'll get into. I think a similar thing will happen to the Raptors. They're going to be tired. You had to go to Milwaukee and all that stuff. And I do think Milwaukee needs to win this game 1. Do they need to win the first 2 games? No. I think they can split it 1-1, and they're still in prime contention to win this series. So, giving it away, I do think the Bucks will win this series in 6 games. I said this on Monday as well. And the reasons for that is I believe their roster is better than the Raptors overall. I think the Raptors so far have relied a lot on hero ball from Kawhi Leonard. And I don't think that will be able to beat such a talented roster in the Bucks. And you might be saying, okay, well, the 76ers had, 4 or 5 stars or whatever they have. Okay, number 1, their stars underperformed in that series. And number 2, they don't have any depth. The Bucks have some depth. They're about 8-9 deep as far as really solid players go. And I think even their starting lineup in some ways could outplay the 76ers starting lineup after what we saw from their series. So the Bucks are clearly a better team. And having gone through a tough Game 7 series 2 nights ago, I think that even these first 2 games will affect the Raptors, and there is a chance they could go down 0-2 to the Bucks. I'm going to go the Bucks in 6. I think they have a more talented roster. And I also think that Giannis is more focused than your usual star in his first big series, right? The guy doesn't seem to care about being famous. He doesn't seem to care about joining a super team. He wants to win it for the Bucks, and he's a freak of nature. Okay, so I think Giannis will will them to a series. The reason I'm saying Bucks in 6 is because if you get into Game 7, Kawhi Leonard will win them that game. He's got that clutch gene. Not as good as Kobe, but he's got that clutch gene. So I think Bucks in 6. I think they take 1. I think they go 1-1 here. I think they steal 1 in Toronto, and then I think they win out after that. That's what I think will happen with this.
Okay. All right.
So what's your prediction?
Really quickly, because we need to get to the Warriors game. I'm saying Bucks, and I'm going back and forth between like 6 and 7.
Yeah.
Because I can see the Bucks winning in 6, but like I said, man, Toronto at home is just really, really tough.
So are you thinking that Toronto might win every single game at home?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
That's where we disagree. Because I think they're good at home. I just don't think their team is good enough to win, like just guarantee that they win 3 games in any scenario. Like you know what I'm saying? And so if they go down 0-2 to the Bucks, for example, I think they lose momentum. And even if they're it's I just think with the way Kyle Lowry's played in the playoffs in the past. And, they still have a lot of young interesting guys off their bench that have playoff experience but don't have like the same playoff experience that I think some other teams have had in the playoffs. I just think guaranteeing that they win every single game at home is a stretch for me, especially with the way they've hero balled it with Kawhi a lot.
True.
That loses you games.
It does. I don't know. I have this weird feeling that it's just going to go 7, and I'm going to say the Bucks because they've got home court, and the Bucks actually have home court throughout. So if the Bucks make it to the finals, regardless of if they play the Warriors or the Blazers, they will get home court, which is somewhat of an interesting fact.
Jumping way ahead to the finals of the Bucks were to get there, though, I think unless Durant is out, I don't really think their home field management means anything.
Because the Warriors can win on the road against
exactly,
anyone. So, but we do need to jump to the game 1 of the Warriors.
Yeah, but you're going Bucks in 7.
Bucks in 7.
So he's going Bucks in 7. I'm going Bucks in 6. And what do you think happens in the game tonight or Wednesday's game
Bucks
if
win.
someone's watching? Bucks.
Which is tonight.
I'm going to go Bucks win as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so game 1 happened in the Western Conference Finals between Portland and Golden State last night, Tuesday. Disappointing game, to be honest. Was somewhat boring. The crowd didn't seem to be in it because I think
it was like a regular season game.
I think what happened with the Golden State crowd was they come off this very hyped and covered series with Houston, and you're not going to be as interested playing Portland. They don't care that Damien Lillard's from Oakland. I think they don't really care that Seth Curry is on the Portland Trailblazers because they have Steph, and Steph is the MVP, right? 2-time MVP, 3-time, I almost said Super Bowl champion, 3-time NBA Finals champion. So, I don't think this fan base is interested. And then it didn't seem like Portland was that interested last night either. I tweeted something last night and I said if Portland doesn't win game 1, they likely won't win the series. I still believe that because I don't think they were going to win the series anyways. But I'm gonna drop back from that point a little bit because I did forget that they had played a game 7, a couple days prior, and that they had played game 7 in altitude against a very tough Denver Nuggets team. It is now the 3rd round of the playoffs, so I'll give them a pass with this loss. If they lose again on Thursday, you bookend it. Warriors are in the finals. It doesn't matter if Durant plays the rest of the series or not. I mean, might as well Warriors. You wait till you lose a game to bring Durant back at that point, right? But so I'll give them a pass with this game. Lillard and McCollum weren't able to get up to 20 points in this game. They combined were 11 for 31. Obviously, they have to play better. I think their defensive strategy was horrendous against Steph Curry in this game. Dropping down your center to let Curry just go off. I get he has an injured finger, but still Steph Curry, and you could see moments of greatness later in that series against the Rockets. So I'll give them a pass on game 1 as long as they make the adjustments and win game 2. I think we have a series. But as far did you have any other points on game 1? Because we do have to. I'm just trying to super quickly analyze game 1. The Splash Brothers are back. Draymond played great. But I think what this game is, game 1 was bound to be the Warriors' game. What do you think has to happen in game 2? And what did you think about game 1?
The Trailblazers don't get a pass for this game.
You're not giving them a pass?
This is the Western Conference Finals.
Tough.
I don't care if they played. I don't care if they played Monday night at midnight and then they had to play again on Tuesday, right? This is an opportunity to steal a game without Kevin Durant. Now, more than likely, Kevin Durant isn't going to play in game 2 because he's not going to be reevaluated until Thursday. And that game 2 game is also on Thursday.
Well, and they won game 1.
The chances that even if the Warriors didn't win game 1, the chances that Kevin Durant plays in game 2 are very minimal, right? So the fact that the Trailblazers have an opportunity to beat the Warriors without the Warriors' best player, and then they come out and only score 94 points, none of their players, starters or on the bench, scored even 20. It was just like, yeah, you're right. They were probably a little bit tired, but guess what? Like, that's why you guys are professional players, and this is the Western Conference Finals. I don't want to hear that at all. I think they came out and they blew a huge opportunity, right? Here's the thing now also, both of these teams, this will equal itself out, but for the Warriors now, they have actual game film from game 1 on what the Trailblazers are trying to do, right? And the Warriors obviously could have looked at what the Blazers did in the last series against Denver, but this is specifically what the Blazers are trying to do against the Warriors. So it's almost like the Blazers had an opportunity to go into Game 1, right, with the Warriors not having as much game film on the current Blazers team on what they're trying to do, and they had an opportunity to really come in and show, like, even if they would have kept this game somewhat competitive, I think that would have given me a little bit more confidence. The fact that they pretty much got blown out and this really wasn't a game. I mean, I'm not putting the blame all on Steph Curry, but when he goes 1 for 7 from the field and only 1 from 4 from
against
3,
his brother too.
He only has 3 points. Rodney Hood was really the only player on the bench that showed up with 17, and he's coming off a knee injury where many people thought he wasn't even going to play.
Yeah.
Right? He was the only one that really showed out. Damien Lillard, CJ McCollum, they combined for less than 40 points. That is not going to get it done. I'm sorry, not on any night of the week against the Warriors. So, yeah, if you're the Warriors right now, I think the one point that I do agree with you on is you don't bring Kevin Durant back until they lose a game. Because if the Warriors can continue to win without Durant and keep him, as fresh as can be for the finals, I'm doing that all day long.
Yeah.
So reevaluate him on Thursday. But if the Warriors come out and win Game 2, I'm saying Durant, you're going to sit out until we lose a game or until we really need you, which would be the finals.
There's also one thing, and we're going to go break, and we're going to move our prediction for this series into cover 5 later because we ran out of time, and I want to get a prediction. I want to get actual analysis on that. But I think what you could do with Durant is if you go up 3-0, for example, then you could play him Game 4, get his legs up again, get him in game shape, and then just end that series so he gets a whole week off again. So I think that's the only way. If they win a third game, I think that's when you play Durant. Unless you lose 2, and then obviously he has to come back at that point. But if you are going to hold him off, and he really is, not as injured as we think, then I think you bring him in once they win that third game, and you finish off the series, so you get the extra time to get ready for the Eastern Conference Finals. But we're going to go to break. We're going to come back with a very interesting Do You Care? We're going to talk about players that got in trouble, got in fights, all this stuff, are going to get suspended. We're going to get into that. Do You Care up next on the Cover 2 podcast on the OC Rock Radio, the TuneIn app, and Facebook Live.
But we know one thing for sure is that Julio Urias will not take the field. This comes after Major League Baseball placed him on an administrative leave for 7 games after his arrest for domestic battery.
Josh Jackson attended the Rolling Loud Festival in Miami. I've never been to the Rolling Loud Festival, but it sounds like a great time. Days and days of hip-hop acts going on stage. And it sounds like a great time to be a young, famous person. Except if you're Josh Jackson and you're a young, famous person that doesn't have a VIP pass.
It's because they were mad that he wanted to leave the Knicks. He was like Knicks fans. Like European Knicks fans. Like beat him up.
Well, he's technically with Mavericks right now.
That's what I'm saying. But they were mad he wanted to leave the Knicks and kind of screwed over the Knicks.
Okay.
Yeah. So, what is Dion Jordan's 10 games suspended? We only have a minute, but so those are the 6 we'll do.
He tried to get in the VIP section. They said no. He walked around. He came back. Tried to get in the VIP section. They said no. Tried to get in the VIP section. They said no. Finally, a gentleman who was working the VIP section happened to be an off-duty police officer working a non-regular duty job. And he was like, sir, I'm going to now escort you away from the VIP section.
In other news, Tyrone Crawford is being charged with a misdemeanor, unlawful assembly from the bar incident in Florida. And Dallas Cowboy players, do me a favor. Just stay away from any bars in Florida. Just stay away from Florida.
We are back here on the Cover 2 podcast on this May 15th of 2019. And Jared, it is May 15th, 2019. For the first time ever on that date. And for the first time ever, actually, we are doing a special edition of
Do You Care?
Yes, Do You Care? And it's actually, the name is going to change today. Do you care that this guy got in trouble? That's what we're doing. Is we found 6 incidents this week. Normally we have 6 questions about sports that we didn't talk about already on the podcast, but today so many people screwed up in this last week or were involved in something that we are going to talk about all 6 of them instead and bring a little light to the podcast today. And Jared is first, and he's going to have to answer a question about his team right here. Jared, do you care that Tyrone Crawford of the Dallas Cowboys had a misdemeanor charge put on him this past week?
I don't know too much about this situation, so I do care. obviously because it's a Dallas Cowboys player and I'm a fan of the Cowboys.
It's another defensive tackle that's gotten in trouble too.
But here's the thing. This one is interesting. Not interesting, but this one is... I'm just very curious about this because Tyrone Crawford is one of the captains of this team, one of the leaders of this team, and a guy who has always been very level-headed, looked up by many of his players and even the coaching staff. So it's just very interesting that he would find himself in this situation when this just doesn't seem like his personality. So like I said, I don't have all the details of this story or what happened, or I believe it was like a fight or something like that, but who knows whether he was drinking or who knows what instigated it. But he obviously is getting in some type of trouble. I don't believe this is going to affect his playing status. Like, I don't think the NFL is going to come in and suspend him for 4 games or 6 games or anything like that. But it's just, like I said, because of his such high character and the fact that he's, as far as I know, has never been in trouble with the law or anything like that before. It's just, it's weird that a guy of his caliber would be getting in trouble with the law. Nick, do you care that the charges against Conor McGregor were dropped in the cell phone incident?
No, because I think Conor McGregor really wouldn't have cared, and his reputation wouldn't have been tarnished if this phone incident had gone along further. He's done a lot worse in his life, and especially even in the last 2 years as far as criminality goes. So I don't think fans would have cared. I think people understand in somewhat how annoying it would be to have a phone shoved in your face all the time, especially if you're just going to your hotel or whatever was happening in that situation. So I think in some ways fans understand that and understand that he's a rebel. He's a fighter, literally and figuratively, and he never has really cared about breaking the law in some minor ways and stuff like that. So, and I think he understands that the more he gets in trouble, the more popular his fights will get, if the trouble is to a certain extent, right? And throwing a dolly to a bus in anticipation for a fight with Khabib, that does draw ratings. And, knocking someone's phone, smashing it, kicking it a bunch of times, and seeing the video, that's just going to get people to think either you're funny or that guy deserves it. So it's stuff like that. So no, I don't care. I don't think it would have mattered, and I don't really think he was tarnished anyways from this issue. And I think that's probably the reason they were dropped, because this fan realized that and was like, okay, I'm not going to get anything out of this, so it's whatever. Jared, do you care that Dion Jordan is expected to get suspended 10 games from the NFL next year?
No, I don't care. And this is stemming from from Dion Jordan using Adderall, which is a banned substance by the NFL. No, Adderall... I know a lot of college students that take Adderall. It helps keep them up. It helps them study, and all that, and keep their focus. But for the NFL, it is a banned substance, and I'm sure, whether DeAndre Jordan knew that or not, the thing that goes against him is that he has had 3 previous incidents or 3 other times where he's been suspended in his short NFL career. He's a former first-round pick of the Miami Dolphins, but being a first-round pick does not absolve you from having 3 previous suspensions and now a potential 4th suspension. Yeah. So the Seattle Seahawks, the team he's currently on, has kind of given him a second chance, right? A second opportunity at living out his NFL dream. But the fact that it seems like he continues to mess up and screw up, it just doesn't look good on his part. So he says that he's confident that he will be able to come back this season and play. And technically he's right. If he only gets suspended 10 games, he will have 6 games to play for the NFL season. But it's just not a good look for a person who has had multiple repeat offenses. It's almost like, okay, dude, you would be like treading on thin ice. It's almost like you'd be walking on eggshells, trying to make sure that whatever you put into your body, you're going to check the NFL's list first to make sure that it's not a banned substance. So I don't care because he's had multiple other offenses, and it doesn't seem like he's learned his lesson.
Drink some coffee, Dion.
Seriously, come on, man. Nick, do you care that Kristaps Porzingis was involved in a street fight back in his hometown?
I do, because the video that came out is hilarious, and big, lanky Kristaps Porzingis, all bloody and in a fight and stuff like that. And I care because the circumstances around it are unfortunate in that he really did not do anything to cause this. And when initially it came out, obviously, there's been some charges or some rumors and assertions about Kristaps Porzingis in the last couple months. They're a lot worse than a fight. So seeing him on the street getting in a fight, I thought it was the beginning of kind of a rapid spiral into obscurity. And when you find out the details that it was just a couple of disgruntled Knicks fans, European Knicks fans, that did this to him, you feel a lot better about it, and you feel bad for Kristaps, and it's the video is a lot more funny when you watch it at this point, because you know that he didn't really do anything to cause this. He wasn't throwing bottles in the club. He wasn't fighting people or anything like that. He got jumped, and he wasn't seriously hurt, and hopefully he gets better, but maybe don't go back to your home country anymore because you're a little too famous. You're also 8'5".
Can't tell a guy not to go back to his home country.
I'm just saying, I will ask Enes Kanter about going back to his own country, but it's a whole other story. But so I do care because the video was very popular and I could not get it off my Twitter feed and stuff like that. But it is nice to know that he wasn't the one that caused this, and that all these rumors and stuff aren't just stacking up into something horrible for him in his career. Jared, do you care that the Phoenix Suns' Josh Jackson was arrested in Miami this week?
No, I don't care. And this is because Josh Jackson is probably the dumbest one out of all these guys other than Conor McGregor, right? So he's at the Rolling Loud Music Festival, which was in Miami. And, Josh Jackson, he was like a number 1 overall pick in the NBA, came out of Kansas, great player, blah, blah, blah. And apparently he thought that he could just get into whatever VIP area he wanted to, and he didn't have a pass. So the police eventually arrested him after he attempted multiple times to get into this specific area, right? Well, guess what? He then fled the cops and tried to get away, and they eventually obviously found him and arrested him again. But it's like, dude, you're not, just because you're an NBA player and you're pretty good, doesn't mean that you just get all this VIP treatment and you kind of get whatever you want. It's you still have to pay for it, and at the very least you could just be cool with the officers and try to make peace with it. You're gonna run away from the officers and think you're gonna get away with it. So I think it was just stupid on his part, and he kind of deserves whatever punishment comes his way. Whether it's it's a suspension by the NBA.
Yep.
I'm sure there's going to be some legal action, but I think this was just a young NBA player thinking that because he's a star, he can get whatever he wants, and obviously that's not the case. So hopefully the next time he goes to a concert or a venue or anything like that, he'll think twice, or he'll just pay for a VIP ticket, because I'm pretty damn sure that he can afford whatever VIP ticket.
He got drafted, number 3?
Yeah, no. He's a millionaire.
Okay, yeah.
Multi-millionaire.
Pay for your ticket, man. I would pay for the ticket. I mean, come on.
I'm pretty sure that he can afford the ticket. So, no, I do not care. Josh Jackson, I'm sorry, but you were acting like an idiot. Nick, last question for you. Do you care that the Dodgers' Julio Urias was arrested on domestic violence charges?
Yes, I do care. And to get a little more serious with this one, this brings back bad memories of 5 years ago when a player named Slava Voinov got in trouble with the Kings for a very, very similar incident. And he was a very promising defenseman prospect. He has since not been allowed to be in the NHL since this incident. And to be honest, after you found out the details, he was a domestic abuser and beat up his wife and deserved to not play in the NHL. Now, the Olympics allowed him to play for the Team Russia, the Olympics last year, but that's a whole other story. But this reminds me of this because it comes out of nowhere. Urias is only 22 years old. He's been a super prospect for the Dodgers pretty much since they picked him up when he was 16 years old.
Wow, 16.
And has had no issues and just seemed like a great Mexican player that was going to bring more to the Mexican Dodgers fan base and all this stuff. And now you hear this at 7:30 at night at the Beverly Center. He gets arrested. And this is not at his home or something like that. He got arrested for apparently assaulting a woman in a parking lot. What you'd have to assume probably is his girlfriend or his wife. I don't know exactly. But this is, if he did it, at that point, I don't care as a Dodger fan to have him on the team anymore. And when this stuff happens, it was the same with Voynov. You found out what he actually did, and you're like, okay, he's done. We don't need him. It's the same with Kareem Hunt with the Chiefs. It's the same with Tyreek Hill.
Also with the Chiefs.
Yeah, also with the Chiefs. And it's the same with Voynov 5 years ago with the Kings. Once he was given up, you realize what had happened, and you're like, okay, that guy's not on our team anymore. And the same should happen with Urias. It's unfortunate because the guy is super, super talented and was going to be potentially one of the starting rotation guys for the Dodgers for years to come. And I mean, looking at 10 years to come, or an impressive bullpen piece and future closer. But if he did this, then he shouldn't be on the Los Angeles Dodgers, and he shouldn't be on any MLB team. And the MLB, if he did do this, needs to take a hard stance like the NFL has, like the NHL did, and like the NBA has. I shouldn't have put the NFL in that as far as good choices with suspensions and stuff. But what the NBA and NHL have done with domestic violence, the MLB needs to follow that and suspend him for the rest of the year at least, if he did do this. But so we're gonna move on. We need to get to cover 5 because we still have a lot to talk about. Stanley Cup playoffs, a couple baseball stories I want to let you know about, and of course Western Conference Finals predictions between the Warriors and Blazers that we weren't able to get to earlier, and then one other 5-minute segment as well. So this is the Cover 2 podcast on the TuneIn Radio app, OC Rock Radio, and Facebook Live. We will be right back.
Williams fed it across, picked up there, but not controlled by Hamilton. Still they fight for it. It's Corrali, but that's stopped by Slavin. Cleared back out again. 2 seconds and 1, and the Bruins have taken a 3-0 lead in the series, winning the game by a score of 2-1.
All right, guys, 20 seconds. Hang tight.
Well, the stunner of the day comes from the New York Jets. This is something that had been percolating Chris Sims. We had talked about it previously. It had been poo-pooed by the likes of Jets head coach Adam Gase, but now general manager Mike Maccagnan is out. That's his reward for participating in the hiring of Gase, for presiding over a free agency period that saw the likes of Le'Veon Bell join the team, and presiding over a draft that resulted in the landing of Quinnen Williams at number 3 overall.
Cover 2 podcast coming back at you live on Facebook Live, the TuneIn app, and OC Rock Radio. Thank you again for joining us. This is our final segment of the show, and like Nick mentioned, we're going to go into Cover 5.
Yes.
One of our more common segments here on the show. So we have 4 different topics that we will discuss for 5 minutes each, and if we have time, we will do our final thought to round out the show. So we're actually going to start with the NFL and some breaking news that just happened this morning as we were starting the show. The New York Jets have shaken up their front office personnel as they have fired their general manager, Mike Maccagnan. If I said that correctly, I'm sorry if I totally did not say that right. And Vice President Brian Heimerdinger. So that is very interesting in the fact that their general manager, well now former general manager, was a key piece and a key voice in the Jets hiring Adam Gase as head coach. Mm-hmm. But there was reports that there was some internal friction between those two as far as personnel between the free agency and the draft. And I think that's one of the reasons why the owner, Chris Johnson, decided to let those guys go. Another interesting fact is that newly head coach Adam Gase is now the interim GM. Now, obviously, I don't think he's going to be the full-time GM, seeing as he has the full-time head coaching duties. But it's interesting that they are just placing him with that tag because you don't see that in the NFL. Not even with really Bill Belichick, even though he does have a lot of say with personnel and team management. It's just not a common move that you see in the NFL where the head coach also has the general manager responsibilities. So, and some interesting breaking news that just came down this morning. Nick, your early thoughts.
Well, it's we found this out 2 hours ago, pretty much, and super early thoughts. It comes as a surprise to me because you went through the whole draft process, which is a huge process, and a free agency process with these guys, and then you fire them. So what does that say about the players that you might have drafted or signed, right? That you don't even like, right? So, and then the fact that you put Adam Gase as the interim GM makes zero sense to me because the guy isn't even that good of a head coach. Why would he be a good GM?
You might as well just say, we have an open vacancy GM position and we're going to fill it. But to put actually Adam Gase in that interim role.
Well, and the other thing is too, how many there isn't a lot of moves to make as of right now because the draft has happened and rosters were just finalized at 90 right now. So the moves Adam Gase would be making aren't too difficult for him because he's on the field and he sees the 90 players they're playing and one guy sucks or what it's not that difficult right now. But come the preseason when you have to make cuts and all that stuff, I think there should be a proper GM or a real front office guy in there, not Adam Gase making all these decisions because he wasn't even that good of a coach. He still isn't even that. The jury's still out on him right now. So I just think that's a whole other scenario, and we'll see what goes on with that. But just to get back to them firing the guys, I just think it's a weird time to do it because you're in the middle now of getting prepared for next season. You've drafted your guys, you signed big free agents like CJ Mosley and stuff like that, and then you fire the guys that made those decisions. So we've been talking about bad organizations all day. The New York Jets have not been the best organization the last couple of years, more than the last couple of years, a lot of years in a row. And then they signed them. It's just, why fire these guys now instead of before all this process happened?
That's the interesting question. And the Jets are actually the only team in the NFL that's committed to at least $15 million in guaranteed money to their new free agents. So they signed 4
and who made those decisions?
Superstar free agents, and C.J. Mosley, Le'Veon Bell, Jamison Crowder, and Henry Anderson, and they are all guaranteed over $15 million. So
that's crazy.
There's a lot of money at stake in just those free agents, and the general manager and the VP are now gone from those teams. Yeah. So there is another interesting fact that I was just reading. So with the Oakland Raiders hiring former draft analyst Mike Mayock as their general manager,
yes.
He had zero experience as an actual general manager. The early rumor is that Daniel Jeremiah, who works for the NFL Network as another kind of draft analyst, he is, I guess, being considered for the Jets GM position. So I think just like with, where Sean McVay was one of the young and upcoming head coaches, and then you had Mike Shanahan and all these teams trying to get younger with head coaches like the Arizona Cardinals as well, I think you might be starting to see somewhat of a turn with front offices and general manager positions where teams are trying to get younger. They're trying to get different perspectives. So Daniel Jeremiah is one. I guess the Philadelphia Eagles executive Joe Douglas, who actually has ties to Adam Gase, is another candidate for this GM job. So there are a few names that are already out there in this early process, and it seems like Chris Johnson, the CEO, the owner of the Jets, it seems like, this isn't like a shocking move for him.
Yeah.
He kind of had this idea, in the back of his mind for probably the last couple weeks, if not the last couple months, seeing as there are already some names being floated around as potential replacements.
So again, why not do it before the draft and all these free agencies where you put all this money? We went a little over time on the 5 minutes there, but we're switching to the Stanley Cup Playoffs. So put 5 minutes on the clock for this one now, too. We had the Blues and Sharks in the Western Conference Finals, and we have the Carolina Hurricanes and Boston Bruins hopefully still in the Eastern Conference Finals. That's been a very lopsided series, and the Bruins are on the brink with a 3-0 lead of winning that series. So I'll focus.
I'm going to say that one's over.
It's pretty much over. Yeah, as a Kings fan, we came back from 0-3.
That was my next question.
So I'm never going to say a team is out of it 0-3 in hockey, but the way the Carolina Hurricanes have played, and they're switching their goalies, and it's a cow or it's a chicken without its head right now.
Desperation mode.
Yeah. So I don't think they win the series. I think they win a game. I think they might be able to win 2 games. But I think Boston will eventually win that series. So I'll stick more to the Sharks and Blues. And this is the Sharks kind of blow the Blues out in the first game, and the Blues come back at home in the second game at home of the series and win 4-2 in a very fun and well played game by them. So this series seems to be a lot more even. And looking at, the Bruins getting potentially the Stanley Cup Finals, I think either of these teams right here could both get to the Stanley Cup Finals, and I think this series is going 7 for sure.
On Monday, for those of you who don't know, Nick and I were both on the Lustig Sports Show at Cal State Fullerton, and Nick did not deny or shy away from his hatred.
Yeah, I hate the Sharks.
San Jose Sharks.
No, for sure.
But it seems like you're giving them a little bit of love right now, saying that you have confidence in.
Trying
them.
to give the Blues love.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't like the Blues as much either, but this is just because the Kings played every Western Conference team under the sun the last couple of years. So eventually, you play a playoff series against somebody, you're going to hate them.
So I have a question for you, and this is kind of going into the future a little bit. If the Bruins, if the Bruins do end up sweeping against the Hurricanes, right, they're going to have some extra rest.
Yes,
right.
a lot extra.
So whereas this Blues and Sharks series looks like it can easily go 6, if not 7. Does it benefit the Bruins seeing how hockey is so physical and that they can use that time to rest? Or if you're the Blues or Sharks, whoever wins this series, and it's more than likely going to go longer than the Bruins series, is that an advantage because they have the momentum and they can easily just slide into that?
You know what? It is interesting because when I think you look at what's happened with the Bruins and Hurricanes in their series, because the Hurricanes swept their opponent, the Bruins did not, and the Bruins have come out and won now 6 consecutive games here in the playoffs. So I think the Bruins have the advantage the longer the Western Conference Finals series goes, because the Sharks have already been in 14 games this playoffs. They've already been to 2 Game 7s. So that is going to take a toll. And so if the Sharks get past them, which I do expect to happen. But I think the longer this series goes, no matter what, for each of these opponents, because the Blues have also had a tougher road in the playoffs. I don't know exactly what they've done because I've been watching Stanley Cup playoffs from the side. But both the Western Conference teams have had that are still in, the Blues and Sharks have had tough routes to get to this point. The longer this series goes, and it's at least going 5, and at least we'll take a trip back to St. Louis now. The Bruins are sitting pretty if they can end their series in 4 or 5. If the Hurricanes can take 2 games from them, that puts a toll on the Bruins too, because then they have to win Game 6 away, or they go to Game 7. And like I mentioned in hockey, even more than other sports, anything can happen in the Game 7 because the puck can just bounce through someone's skates, bounce off railings, all that stuff, and go in the net, and you can win 1-0 that way. It takes a lot more for basketball and baseball to win a game. So you don't want to get to a Game 7 in hockey, literally, because anything can happen. But yes, I think we still have
about a minute.
1 more minute to go. You want to ask me one more question?
Quick question.
Yeah.
Assuming the Bruins do close out this series, do you know who would have home ice? Would it be the Bruins outright, or would it be the Blues or the Sharks?
That's tough. I believe the Sharks have the best record left.
Okay.
So the Sharks would have home ice.
So that would help them out because then they wouldn't have to travel if they do get to a Game 6 or Game 7.
That's true. And if they were to win it at home, you're making Boston travel all the way. And I literally know how long it takes to get to, so that's not the easiest flight all the way over. It's longer coming from Boston to San Jose, so it's a 6.5 hour flight, and you're playing a team in its own in its own arena. And the Shark Tank, albeit that I hate it, is a very, very tough place to play. So yes, that is a disadvantage if the Sharks get. I believe the Bruins do have a better record than the Blues, but we can check that out. But we will have extra time, so I will look that up. All right, moving on to the MLB, and actually sticking to Boston. Funny enough, Chris Sale last night, 17 strikeouts in 7 innings. Now his pitch count was long, so he was not going to go any longer. I believe it was 113, something like that, in the over 100 pitches. So the 7 innings doesn't matter as much, but you picked Chris Sale to win the Cy Young. The last couple games, he is pitching like that Cy Young pitcher.
Finally.
What can this do for the Boston Red Sox that they have this guy playing better and their hitters are starting to hit it better? Is there a chance Boston could still win the AL East, in your opinion?
Oh, of course there is. We are so early we're only into the second month of this season. So, yes, I think they still can. And listen, they're only 4 games out of first place. I'm sorry, but I don't expect the Rays to continue.
You're not that high on the Rays
in this first. No, I'm really not. I think once the Yankees start to get some of their players back and they go back to the actual Major League Yankees and not the AAA Yankees, I think them, along with the Red Sox finally getting their feel back, you're right. Sale's starting to pitch a little bit better, and their hitting is starting to finally pick up for the Red Sox. So the one thing I will say is that was great. Obviously, that Chris Sale had 17 strikeouts, but the Red Sox still lost. So, you know what I mean? It's almost like,
there's issues with the bullpen and stuff like
right,
that.
It's like, that's fantastic, but then all of that work for essentially nothing, because at the end of the day, it matters about wins and losses, not necessarily about individual records. So, but yes, I do think the Red Sox are playing much better, and like I said, they're only 4 games out, to whereas Toronto Blue Jays and the Orioles are already a combined 19 or 20 games out. So the Orioles are already 11 games out, and Toronto is 8.5. So, I mean, those two teams you can almost kind of write off right now, to whereas the Red Sox have plenty of time with their depth. And if they stay healthy, now they do have some injury concerns, but if they can finally get themselves back on track, then I think they will be in that AL East discussion. No questions asked.
And to just further your point, because this was going to be the next question, with Giancarlo Stanton, now they're clarifying his injury, that he's going to be out for a little longer than people think. It's a left shoulder strain, and obviously being a hitter and all that stuff, you have to be able to use your shoulder. Right. So Stanton's out, and I was just reading something about Miguel Andujar, the young third baseman that, once again, Jared, did not win the Rookie of the Year last year. I just need to show the jacket. He is going to be deciding on surgery between the next 24 hours that will end his season, if he has it, or he will deal with the season. He's had a horrendous season so far, batting well over 200, and I don't even know if he has a home run this season. So The Yankees are still injured and not getting much better. I agree with you. I think the Red Sox, it's their division to win right now, unless the Rays can obviously do what a lot of people didn't think they'd do, is win the AL East. So I agree with you. I think the Red Sox, being good at this point, Chris Sale being as good as he is, they're starting to get really dangerous. And if they can go and win their next series against the Rays, or maybe sweep them or something like that, I think the Red Sox are then your prime contender to win the AL East.
Quick update on the Yankees. They just acquired Kendrys Morales from the A's.
That's true.
So a little more depth.
Nice. Yeah, he's a first baseman, a DH. Older guy, can't run the bases well, so but yes, it works out.
I think he just gives them a hitting presence with the lack of depth.
100%. Because I think they realize Stanton's going to be out for another month or so they need somebody else. And then Vlad Guerrero Jr. Hit his first career home run last night, and then his second career home run last night, 450 feet in San Francisco in the Marine Layer.
Part to hit
in the Marine Layer. So he's let's see if he starts getting going. Shohei Ohtani hit his first home run of the season the other night in Minnesota, a long home run to center field. So both those guys you were kind of waiting to come out and show something. They came out and did something. So AL East, very interesting in the AL East. You never know. Again, if the Rays start to falter, the Yankees remain injured, and the Red Sox don't actually pick it up. Toronto, if they can get, I'm just saying, if Vlad Guerrero Jr. can really start hitting, you never know. They could make it tough for those three teams. I'm not going to say they're going to make the playoffs, but they could make it really tough for those three teams. So we will move on to the last 5 minutes here, and that is going to be the Western Conference Finals predictions between the Portland Trailblazers and Warriors. You heard us earlier talk about what happened in Game 1 and what we kind of expect or what we want the teams to do. But Jared, you have the floor. What do you think is going to happen in these Western Conference Finals? Who wins and in how many games?
I think the Warriors win this series, and from the looks of last night, I think the Warriors win in 5. So I think what happens is the Warriors will win Game 2, which is tomorrow night, at home. And then I think they go into Portland. I think they lose Game 3, right? I think Kevin Durant comes back Game 4. I actually like how you were talking about at the beginning of the segment, how I initially predicted that the Warriors wouldn't bring Kevin Durant back either at all, or they wouldn't bring him back until they lose their first game. But you kind of make a good point. If the Warriors go up like 3-1 at some point and they want to bring Kevin Durant just to kind of let him run out a little bit,
and win the series too,
because here's the thing. I think you and I are both predicting that the Bucks and Raptors series will go a little bit longer. which means that if the Warriors win early, they're going to get some extra rest. And while that's a good thing for Kevin Durant, you also want him to be kind of in the zone. And so if he can go out and test that calf, if it really is a calf injury, and make sure that it's, all right and good to go, not to say that he has to play 30 or 40 minutes, but just get him out there for 15 or 20 and make sure that he's good for the finals, then I think that's probably the better thing for the Warriors to do. So, going back to the predictions, I think the Warriors win in 5. They closed it out back at home, but I think the Blazers only get one home win.
So there's a couple things that go into this prediction because there's a couple scenarios that could happen. I'm gonna say Golden State in 6. Okay, because I do believe Portland will win one game at home, and I think they can grab game 2 as well, having got their legs behind them again. And now knowing what they have to do to beat the Warriors and knowing what they did wrong, I think they'll make enough adjustments without Durant in the lineup to win that game. I'll tell you this, though. If Kevin Durant does not come back in this series, I could absolutely see Portland winning in 7. Okay, because I'm making this prediction assuming Durant comes back by at least game 4, at worst game 5. I don't expect him game 2. I wouldn't even expect him in game 3. But we'll leave it out there. If Durant doesn't actually come back and the injury you alluded to is actually worse and they're just trying to scare teams.
Man. You never know.
No, if Durant doesn't play in the series, Portland absolutely has a chance to win this series. Because the depth with Golden State, although they have the 3 stars and the great role players, they're only about 6 deep, maybe 7 deep as far as legitimate NBA players goes. So that is going to hurt when Portland has a lot better guys and you expect Seth Curry to play better eventually and you expect Rodney Hood to keep it up and all these guys and Collins too. You expect him to play a little better too. And then, of course, Lillard and McCollum. So if Durant doesn't come back, I could see them winning the series, right? But my prediction right now is that Durant will come back eventually. I'll go Portland in 6. I'll give them one extra game. But I absolutely could see it end in 5 because let's say Portland doesn't win game 2. They'll probably win a game at home, but they're not going back to Golden State and winning there if they couldn't even beat them once at home before. You know what I'm saying? So. And then especially if Durant comes back, I don't think. But I'll give them 6. I think they will lose in Portland. I think Golden State, they just fundamentally know how to win. And even without Durant, I still think they can grab a bunch of games and still win the series without him. But I don't expect that to happen. And they need to bring him back before this series ends, no matter what, like you were saying, because he needs to get his legs under him. And the Bucks and Raptors will be a tough enough opponent to where you do need that guy in the line.
Right. Here's the thing why, or the main reason why the Warriors can win without Kevin Durant. And I'm not saying that they're a better team without Kevin Durant. I'm just saying that they can win without him. It's because of their team defense. Everyone always talks about their offense, how the Splash Brothers with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson can shoot the lights out from 3. How Draymond Green is the utility guy. He does a little bit of everything, even though he's kind of undersized. He can play center. He can play power forward. He can even bring the ball up like a point guard for you, right? And then you have guys off the bench like Andre Iguodala and Sean Livingston. They just have a good nucleus of players. But because they play solid defense, whether it's their starting 5 or their bench, it always keeps them in games. And when you're able to stay in games, even without your best player, and you still have the best 2 lethal sharpshooters in the game, you are always going to be able to win. So from a defensive standpoint, I think that's what really sets this team apart. Because if they weren't a good defensive team, then they would have to shoot the lights out every single game. And guess what? When you live by the 3, you also die by the 3. But the fact that you can back that up with your defense, I mean, Portland, who easily scores over 100 points every game, averages over 100 points. They held them to, 92 or 94?
Yeah.
That's not going to cut it for Portland. And if the Warriors can hold Portland under 100 points, it'll be a sweep. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, I agree. No, I could see a sweep. I could see it in 5. I could see Portland. I'm guessing Portland will lose in 6, because we're assuming Durant comes back. But if Durant doesn't actually come back and it's announced that he more so if they reevaluate him and go, okay, he's out for the Western Conference Finals, I think Portland then would realize, okay, we just need to make these minor adjustments and not these major adjustments, and we can definitely win this series. Okay, so we're done with cover 5. We have about 5 minutes left in the podcast, so we're going to do our final thoughts. Jared, you want me to do mine first? Okay. So my final thought is going to go to the high school baseball ranks, where I'm going to shout out the my brother's team, the Santa Margarita Eagles baseball team, who are going to the state championship game in Division II that will be played at Dodgers Stadium this Saturday at 3 p.m. The team has an abundance of pitching. They have so many good pitchers. They haven't even used some of their best pitchers that often in the playoffs so far.
Really?
Yeah. So they have everybody going. I believe everybody is eligible to pitch this game. So I unfortunately will not be able to be there just because of circumstances with work on Saturday, but I will be paying attention. I will be listening, and shout out to them. Guys like my brother's homies like Milan Tolentino, who is a prospect for next year's draft, name to know. Matt McClure, who will be the starting pitcher. Guys, been over to our house a bunch of times. Hopefully he plays well. And then of course my brother Chase Nenad, who plays football as well at Santa Margarita and is on the baseball team and is going to be shooting for a state championship this weekend. So I just wanted to call them out. Dodger Stadium, if anybody wants to go and didn't know that's listening and seeing this on Facebook. Dodger Stadium, 3 p.m. I don't know the price of tickets or anything like that, so don't get me on that. But 3 p.m. Dodger Stadium, Santa Margarita versus Norco High School for the Division II baseball championships.
That is very awesome, man.
Yeah.
And the fact that your brother's in it, there's just even
He's on the
more
team.
Personal.
Yeah, I mean, I would care less if he wasn't on the team, more than likely. But yeah,
that's awesome. My final thoughts. There's not a whole lot of say random news going on, but there's one kind of feel good story in the NFL, and it has to do with my Dallas Cowboys. And it's the fact that Travis Frederick, the All-Pro center who missed all of last year with the Guillain-Barré disease, which has to do with his strength, and it's like a physical thing. That, I mean, I think he lost like 50 pounds or something like that. He lost all of his strength last training camp.
Well, because did he play at all last year?
No, he didn't.
That's right. Okay.
Last training camp, he was. You could tell during practice and stuff, he was getting beat a lot. He didn't have his same stamina. He was kind of losing his breath a lot, and they were like, "What's going on?" So we went and got evaluated, and it turns out he has this very, very rare disease, and so he took all last year off and basically had to regain his strength, regain his conditioning and all of that. And he's fortunately back with the Cowboys on just a practice-only basis. Right now it's just OTAs, so there's no physicality going on. But just the fact that he's able to be back out on the field, he says he's pretty close to 100% as far as his strength and everything coming back to him. So, his health looks to be in good condition, and hopefully he can come back and contribute to the Cowboys team. But the main concern was his health because it's such a rare disease and a rare illness. I don't know what the scientific studies are or what the cure is for all of this, but fortunately for him, I think his body has been able to withstand all of it.
Yeah.
And like I said, he looks back.
I'm sure he'll come back better than ever.
Right.
And it's got to be good to have a guy like that on in the practices, talking to the new rookies and stuff like that.
And the great thing was last year, even though he wasn't playing and he wasn't suiting up, he was on the sidelines like a coach. He had a microphone and everything, and he was trying to help the rest of the offensive line with all that. So he was still very much involved in the organization, even though he wasn't actually out on the field. And now that it looks like he's back to full health or close to full health, he should be ready to go for the season. So good for him. Obviously, I'm a Cowboys fan, so I wanted to shout that out. But just for him on a personal note, good that he's able to get his health back.
Absolutely. All right, there you go. You hear the music right there. If you're listening on OC Rock Radio, the TuneIn app, or YouTube, if you're on Facebook Live, you don't hear anything. And that's good, because if it was playing, that means we would be off the air. Great podcast today, Jared. We'll be back next week, kind of analyzing what's happened with the Western Conference Finals. Looking at the Stanley Cup Final, which I believe will be decided, or really close to being decided at that point, before our next podcast. And then, of course, jumping into any other sports news that we can talk about. So once again, I want to thank Alex Lustig for letting us be on his show and his last final show
It was a great show.
this Monday. So shout out to Alex. He's welcome on this show.
Yeah, we're going to try to have him here in the next couple weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. So you can expect him here, and he's got an abundance of sports knowledge. He loves sports, loves talking about it, and so that will be great. But as far as this show goes, we're ending today. I'm Nick Neenan.
And I'm Jared Smith.
And this has been the Cover 2 podcast.